Sorry, my name is Michael Paul. I'm a technical marketing architect looking after Guardrails. So I've been doing a lot of work with Ty, with the other product managers, and also with the engineering teams, and working towards making Guardrails a reality. And it's quite an exciting product. If you ask me, I mean, I could be biased, but there we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, first of all, we're just going to rewind a little bit and just go back to some of the things that Ty and Justin before him have been saying about Hub and the fact that it's a platform. So within that platform, as Justin pointed out, we've had a number of accounts we've onboarded into that platform. Now, what happens when we onboard those accounts into the platform is that we are using the access to those accounts to go and have a look at the inventory, to go and have a look at what's there. We're also understanding the relationships between the various components that are in there. And crucially, as well, we're setting up an event stream. And that event stream associated with each account basically going to send information to Hub about changes that go on. And that's quite important because not only does it allow us to keep our knowledge of the relationships in the inventory up to date, it means we don't have to rely on some sort of periodic scan to find out what's going on, but it also allows us to react quite quickly to changes in configurations. And this will become quite important when we start to look at the policy templates and the desired state and drift detection when we go a little bit further. The other important thing that happens when we onboard these accounts is we are associating these accounts automatically with appropriate compliance benchmarks. So CIS, NIST, HIPAA, PCI, those kind of benchmarks, there are standards that have been set out for how, say, an AWS account or an Azure account should be configured and used to be compliant with those benchmarks. And as Ty mentioned, in VMware, we've basically translated those into sort of policy settings. And these policy settings are effectively automatically associated with the cloud accounts when they're onboarded into Hub. Now, because we've done that, we're then able to go through and evaluate all of the configurations and settings across these cloud accounts and look for any sort of violations that may crop up. So, as an example, maybe we've got an account where an AWS account where the user hasn't been secured using multi-factor authentication. I can assure you that crops up in most of the benchmarks, probably all of them, in fact. But yes, we could go into the AWS console, we could have a look at that. But when you start looking at multiple cloud accounts, potentially tens, hundreds, or thousands, then doing that at scale is just, it's nigh on impossible. And also when you start crossing off, between Azure and AWS, for example, is a completely different method for doing it. So what Guardrails does, one of the key things is it's based off findings. So these findings are the violations that get raised, any configuration drifts, for example. We can even generate findings based off some of the native cloud tooling, such as Guard Duty, for example, in AWS, Defender for Cloud from Azure, for example. We can pick up any findings that are flagged up by the native tools as well. And we basically bring them into a single place, and they're given an attention score here. And that attention score is, as the name suggests, is designed to get your attention. The higher the score, the more important it is that it's something that's dealt with. And so we can actually very simply get a unified view across all of our cloud accounts of all of the issues, all of the potential violations and configuration drifts that are here that need someone to look at. And if we expand on any one of these particular violations here, we get a lot more information about where it's come from, what it applies to. So, for example, we can see the age of the violation here. We can see the number of frameworks this particular violation relates to. So we can see all these different frameworks. So if we are concerned about HIPAA, for example, if we're in healthcare, then we might want to make sure that we're compliant with all these things in the HIPAA benchmark. So we can see, across all of the potentially hundreds or thousands of findings that come up, we can very easily see what's going on with all of our cloud accounts. And the nice thing is that this is constantly updated. So whenever we get a new configuration event come in from the cloud account, we're able to evaluate that against the benchmarks and generate new findings if we need to.
These findings create like custom policy sets where you say like this particular type of application is not allowed to live in AWS, but it's allowed to live in Azure. Like, could we create our own custom definitions?
You can create custom benchmarks and custom policies. Yes. I guess could this application run in one cloud and not another? That might be something that you would actually, I suppose, configure it more the kind of the consumption layer kind of thing. So however you're standing up and configuring these resources, that might be something that's gated there rather than here.
Okay. If you saw the hub demo earlier, where Justin was keying in different search queries, you can take those exact queries and turn them into a policy here.
Okay, great.
And so you can detect anything that we have inventory or that we inventory today.
Do you have the opportunity? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just wondering while we're on this topic, regarding Kubernetes specific policies, for instance, which is kind of the same across environments, if you use Rego, for instance, for open policy agent, is this something that you could do as part of the custom policy definitions here?
Yes, that is an interesting. I guess that's an interesting idea. We today don't use Rego in this part of the product. We are evaluating things down the road, so we can talk about that. But that is used on the Tanzu.
Because, for instance, with Azure policy, I can say at least that this has been helpful to kind of make it even more granular for Kubernetes specific policies that are customized. For example, we could utilize Open Policy Agent and Rego to kind of define it even further. So this is kind of useful.
Can you subscribe to this as a Kafka topic, or what other ways can you consume this set of alerts?
So there's a notification system where you can define multiple different targets. Any kind of messaging app. We support a webhook, so anything that supports webhooks, different queuing methods through the API. So a lot of that is built into the platform.
Of course, you could query all these findings via the API as well. So, you could almost do a sort of a pull of findings into some other system if you wanted to. So, we have the ability to narrow down the findings. As you saw earlier, we've got sort of something of the order of about 4,000 findings across all of those accounts. So we can drill down and narrow down our focus to look at some of these other findings. Now, what I've done at the moment is I have switched to, well, I haven't switched. I've basically filtered by the type of finding drift. This is a particular type of finding that actually relates to those infrastructure as code policy templates that Ty mentioned briefly. So here we can see we have a number of findings related to some of these policy templates. And I'm going to have a very quick look at one of these. For example, this particular one here about the IAM password policy not being strong. And here we can see it's finding very similar to the other violations we see, but actually the key difference is this is something we've actually defined through a code template, and we can actually see the difference between our desired state here on the right and our current state here on the left. So this is basically a drift in our configuration. So we've actually stated we want a particular configuration, and this is what Guardrails is detecting here on the left. And Guardrails is able to remediate these differences. So not only can it identify them, but if we so choose, it can actually go out and remediate them. And this is where the event stream comes into play as well. If someone were to have the access to be able to go in and modify the current state of this particular configuration, that gets detected by Guardrails, and we can automatically revert the configuration back to where it should be. So to set up these policy templates is fairly straightforward. We have a library that we supply with Guardrails of policy templates related to AWS, Azure, for example, to configure, shall we say, common configurations to establish a secure landing zone for our applications. So, for example, we can create organizational units or subscriptions, or make role assignments, configure IAM, that kind of stuff, CloudTrail, Guard Duty. We have sort of templates in here for all of those things. And these templates can be applied to one or more accounts and can either be set just to alert us, or they can be set to continuously enforce a configuration. So very quickly, just show you how that works. So if we take one of the templates from our library and bring it into our sort of list of curated templates here, we're going to pick this one very simply. So that kind of relates to the drift that we saw just now. So it's basically just enables or verifies a strong IAM password policy on our AWS accounts. So this particular template here, we can look at all the actual code behind it, and actually a lot of it that's in here actually relates to how the template or the desired state is presented out to a user. The bit that actually does the hard work, right down here, basically just ensures that the IAM password policy exists and has the correct configuration. So if we were to go and apply this policy to an account, we can select one or more of our accounts, or we can choose to apply it to all our accounts. So it becomes very easy to apply the same configuration across your entire organization, across all of your cloud accounts, and have it continuously enforced. For now, I'm just going to pick the one account I'm going to use, which, there we go. Just going to pick this one. We then have to set the parameters for our particular desired state. So here I could set a minimum password length of, say, I don't know, make it 20, shall we? And I have an option now whether or not I want to monitor this desired state and just flag up when there's a difference between the desired state and the current state, or I can continuously enforce. So I'm going to continuously enforce this. So it should go away now and actually make that change on the AWS account, which I have open here in the background. And you can see it's got a fairly weak IAM password policy. So if I go and apply the policy template, In the background, the the policy template engine will go and look at the existing configuration, compare it to the desired state, and it will go and make any necessary changes it needs to. So this should.
Is there
after a few seconds?
Is there any plans in making the ability to notify you of what's going to be impacted by your change? Like, hey, there's 53 accounts that are there that have shorter password policies than that.
Yeah, a bit of a what if. So that is, it's possible with the certainly possible with the technology that's actually implementing this to kind of get that sort of difference up. At the moment, no, it's not going to show that back to you. And generally, if that is a concern, what the typically at the moment the best approach is to set up these desired states in monitor mode. You can then optionally remediate later on. So if you set up in monitor mode, you would be able to see the differences between the desired state and the current state. And if you're fine with that, you can go and enforce. So that wouldn't be a problem.
In the monitoring state, are you pushing those? Are you able to push those into the CI/CD pipeline or something, alerting, security tools, all the other fun stuff, ticketing systems?
So that would come down to the notifications, I guess. So potentially via webhooks, I guess you could do, yeah. Ty?
No, I was just saying, later on what Michael was saying, monitor mode is probably the first step you would take. Most people aren't going to go straight to remediation, but as they get comfortable with this, with the service and how it works, I think that's what we're seeing, how the adoption curve is looking. And then yes, we have lots of different notification systems or methods to notify users, create tickets, and integrate with third-party tools. So
I guess the other integrations with like ServiceNow or other centralized.
Yeah, so integrations with like services like Jira and email and Slack and and just the generic webhook allows you to do quite a bit in terms of third-party integration.
So you can action effectively anything you could do through the UI. You should be able to manage via an API as well.
That's exactly how the system is built.
Right.
Yes, yeah. So anything really leverage the API to its full power.
Yeah. And so very briefly, you can see this desired state has run successfully, and if you're watching, you'll see that the password length has changed to 20. I don't know what this little red box is. But yeah, the password policy minimum password length is now that. If I were to change it through the console or some other mechanism, that would get picked up by Guardrails and it would reinforce that desired state back onto the cloud account. So obviously there's much more that we can do with this, much more in terms of configuring the accounts. The other thing I haven't mentioned as well, we've also got the ability to create new cloud accounts through Guardrails. So we actually have the ability here to create a new cloud account and have policy templates automatically applied to that new account as part of the provisioning process. So, if we are creating a new account that's dedicated to a business unit or a particular application, then we can actually spin that up very quickly through Guardrails and have it secure by default. I'm going to pass back now because I'm aware I'm a bit over the time, I think.
I got one last question for you, Michael.
Sure.
So this seems very similar to, look, I'm sorry, I don't know what to call it anymore. ARIA config, Tanzu config, I don't know what you guys want to call it at this point. What was
talking about salt, basically?
Yes, exactly. So is there a integration where we can actually tie these type of connections in from the build process within the automation solution and then tie it back into this, kind of how you just described that new account tying back?
I mean, at the moment, the other integration we're kind of working at the moment that provides that kind of fourth pillar that I mentioned is the secure host configuration. Now, that is effectively ARIA automation config, but the kind of the security operations or secure hosts part of it. So that integration's going to be there. I think if you're talking about maybe creating an account and then automatically adding it to ARIA automation, that's something that's a little further down the road, but it would certainly make sense.
Yeah, so the use case I'm thinking of is, when we have compliance, you need to make sure that all new workloads have compliance set on it. And so if you're going to build something through an automation pipeline, is that something that's done through Tanzu Hub, old habits, or is it done through like an automation piece? Which side of it is actually doing that day zero or day, one-ish configuration is what I guess I'm driving towards.
Yeah, it's an API call away. So within the system, collaboration between Hub and us. So Guardrails. So you provision the account and we register it to Guardrails. So